Hi guys, and welcome to the What I Read in July video, as well as I may or may not have read way too many fantasies this month and gotten a little bored video. So let's get into it. So I read a total of 9 books this month, with 7 of them being fantasies, and the last 2 being mystery thriller, because at that point I basically fantastically kicked myself out of fantasy. I actually started this month off with I read only fantasy books for a week. So the first book I read was Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie M, because I don't know how to say her last name. But this book was a very interesting, different type of read. It's set in Italy, which is really interesting, and I think it's the 1900s or something like that. And the whole premise is that it's a world full of witches and incantations and runes. So that's kind of like the feel of this book. The main idea is that there's this girl named Emilia, and her sister Vittoria is murdered, and Amelia's off to get revenge on whoever did it and find out that whole mystery. In the process, she meets this guy named Wrath, who's one of the 7 princes of the underworld, and he's supposed to be like super vengeful, supposed to have a lot of wrath basically. And they are kind of like unlikely partners, since Wrath is also trying to find out who's killing people in this village, since Vittoria could be connected to some bigger conspiracy. And that's kind of like the idea of the book. I found the book very interesting. It was really fast paced. The book kind of started off somewhere and ended somewhere else, and I feel like it was a really good first book to a trilogy. I gave the book 4 stars, and honestly I felt like I read this such a long time ago. It was 4 stars since it had a really interesting concept and interesting beginning to it. The setting was also just really fun. Emilia's character I think is pretty strong, and kind of her thought process and kind of how she does things is interesting to read about, and her interactions with Wrath is also interesting in how they kind of form an alliance sort of thing. But yeah, that was the first book. I'll tell you my thoughts on the second 2 later. May or may not be foreshadowing. The second book I read was Clockwork Angel, and I read this in my video of fantasies, and then I read another book, and then I finished the series because this was absolutely fantastic. The whole series just was so good. I was not expecting that. The book is about this girl named Tessa who comes to London since her aunt in New York died, and she doesn't have any family except her brother in London. So once Tessa comes there, she goes with these people called the Dark Sisters, who were supposedly sent by her brother Nate. But this all happens in chapter 1, by the way, and it turns out that the Dark Sisters are bad guys, and they know that Tessa has this ability to change, which basically means that she can change her appearance, her voice, and even get some memories of some person, as long as she has some item that was theirs. In this fantasy world, that ability is super rare, or it doesn't exist, and therefore Tessa's kind of hunted down and people want her for her ability. So that's kind of the whole situation, and this all happens in chapter 1, by the way. And she gets rescued, and that's where the story actually really picks up. Once she's rescued, she's taken to this place called the Institute, with a capital I. There's a lot of capitals in this book, it's kind of funny. But anyway, she goes to the Institute where she meets a bunch of people, and there's a lot of found family in this book, and her interactions with these people, and she befriends these 2 characters, Will and Jem, who are just awesome to read about. They're fantastic. And Will, Jem, and Tessa form this trio, which is just really fun to read about. The humor in this book is really well put in through Will, and his remarks are all like funny or sarcastic, and it's just really fun to read. It was kind of slow / hard for me to get in the beginning, but then after that first chapter where she gets rescued, it picks up slowly, and then you get to kind of like the midway point, and it just jumps, like it just goes so high, and it's just so good. The kind of idea of the book is a bit like done before, if that makes sense. It's just this girl finds out she has powers, she figures out how to use them, and she fights bad guys, you know? But the way that the story is written is just really different from things I've read, especially also the London 1800 setting is just super fun, and the speaking in the book too is kind of like from olden times, but not hard to read olden times, just fun to read olden times, you know? I actually read like Jane Eyre last year, and that one was just kind of like hard to read old times. So yeah, this book was just awesome. I gave it 4.75 stars, and I'm pretty sure you can tell by now that I love this book so much. This whole series is just so good, and 4.75 really mostly because the first bit was a bit hard for me to get into, and kind of comparatively to the second two books, 4.75 was a good number for this book. But yeah, the whole fantasy world is kind of vampires, powers, demons, and just it's a whole mix of things. And I forgot to mention one more thing. These people that Tessa is rescued by people at the Institute, they're called shadow hunters, and they basically like fight these demons and bad guys, and they're kind of like the protectors of the fantasy world, and they kind of protect like regular people from these bad fantasy characters slash beings. The next book I read was Throne of Glass, and that I think is a pretty popular book. Not as popular as Sarah J. Maas's other book, Court of Thorns and Roses, but I think because of that series, Throne of Glass kind of picked up. I don't know. But anyway, Throne of Glass is about this girl named Selena, and she's this assassin who is supposedly one of the best assassins in this entire nation, and she's just like super ruthless and just like does her job and just leaves, you know? But she was captured, and she's been working in the mines as a slave for like the past year until this prince comes and chooses her to be kind of like his representative in this competition of I think 24 total people who all are going to compete to become the king's spy, basically. The book really follows this competition mostly. That's kind of the main plot thing. Partway through, you get this kind of magic plot situation added in, but it's still within the idea of the competition. So the book really just follows Selena and her participating in this competition, trying to win. That's the idea. I gave the book 3.4 stars, and I feel like I need to give an explanation on just what I think of Throne of Glass, but also just A Court of Thorns and Roses. I read that, I think, last month. I'm not 100% sure. Last month or 2 months ago. And I actually gave A Court of Thorns and Roses 3.5 stars at first. But then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, why did I give it 3.5? And then I kind of think now that it's more of a 3-star book, and then therefore Throne of Glass is 3.4, because I know Throne of Glass for me was much more fun to read than A Court of Thorns and Roses, and then on just the plot and everything, I felt like Throne of Glass was better. I know A Court of Thorns and Roses is super loved and such a popular book, but I feel like it just wasn't for me, and Throne of Glass was more kind of the fantasy that I read. So yeah, 3.4 stars. Really, the idea is not complicated at all. It's just really simple. And while that's good, I felt like also it was just a little boring, but I did get through the book pretty quickly. As soon as I finished reading Throne of Glass, I got back into this series. So the second one is Clockwork Prince, and this book really just so good. From page 1 to page, like, this is a pretty thick book by the way, but from page 1 to page like 475, it was awesome. As we're getting more into the depths of this world slash characters, we're getting their backstories and everything. So in the first book, you got basically most of Jem's backstory, and this one you get Will's backstory and why he is the way he is. And I feel like that was just done really well, and the consequences of that are just written so well. The characters too, this book just continues making the characters so unique but working so well together. And I don't want to tell you guys like about the plot too much because that is kind of like a spoiler of the entire first book, but there's like this sort of climax plot twist thing in book 1, and this one is dealing with the consequences of that. This book though, I gave 5 stars. I just couldn't put it down. It was so good. I was reading it into the middle of the night, past the middle of the night, and the characters again are written so well, the plot was done so well, the writing of the book too was just really, really good. Really just a 5-star book. You can't find some fault in it, you know? And that's what this book was. I literally cannot tell you a part of the book that I didn't like. Like, it was just awesome. Six of Crows, Caraval, that level, you know? And yeah, I feel like this book isn't talked about as much. At least I haven't heard about it a lot. Definitely recommend this book. I think this series is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. After that, I finished the series with Clockwork Princess, and this wraps up so well. The ending is just, oh my gosh, it's crazy. The first two books just really build up to this last conclusion book, and by this time you know the bad guy and you know the plan, and it's kind of just defeating the bad guy. The majority of the book is just twists and turns, and by this time you are so connected to the characters that you're like, oh, please don't die, please don't die, please don't die, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, this book just takes you on, I feel like it's such an emotional roller coaster book. Like, if I wanted to describe this book in a word, I feel like it would be like heart-wrenching or something. The book just ends really, really well. The way that it's done is really different and interesting, and it kind of like finishes off the story. I know there's like a bazillion books in this Shadowhunter world, and we're currently on like book 487 or something, but this series though, I feel like is just such a good trio. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars, and when I'm rating something, I take into account a lot of different things. So how the characters were written, the character development, the plot, the writing style, and how you're shown things, if that makes sense, and all of that put together. So this book I did give 5 stars, but if we were rating only on the plot, I like the plot of book 1 better than book 3. So hopefully that's not confusing, but just everything together, the whole package, makes this book a 5-star book. Again, same as Clockwork Prince, I can't think of any faults in this book. It was done really well, and I just really enjoyed it, and I, couldn't put it down. Again, this is like 562 pages or something, and I got through it so quickly. So yeah, this whole series, just fantastic, just absolutely fantastic. All right, after that like 7-hour rant on the Infernal Devices series. Oh, also, let me show you guys the spines put together. It looks cool. Okay, anyway, I read Kingdom of the Cursed after that series, and that is Kingdom of the Wicked book 2. So I don't have it, but book 2 of the series. And that book was interesting in the least. I did not like it. It kind of just ruins the characters from book 1. Emilia was a really interesting character to read about in book 1, and book 2, she just completely changed. Like, I don't even know if that's Emilia anymore. Like, is this some imposter situation going on or something? And even Wrath too, he just got kind of annoying, and just, I don't know, the whole characters, and something that I expect that they would not do in book 1, they are literally doing in book 2. Like, it's such a big change that it doesn't make sense, And a lot of books, I know the characters do change from book 1 to book 2, and that shows like growth and development, but in this one, Emilia's just bad. Like, I don't know. And the plot too, it just like barely moved, and to be honest, I did not know what was going on most of the time. I was just confused, and I just started skimming partway through. So yeah, skimming or like reading every other paragraph, and I did not enjoy the book at all. I was kind of just like, hopefully, let me get to the end today, and kind of just like going through it. The plot, it had a good beginning. It picks up exactly where book 1 left off, and the setting is different. So the whole her getting acquainted to this new setting and the people she's meeting is there, and it could have been done well is what I can say. I know a lot of people do like this series as a whole, but for me, I just did not like book 2. It just kind of ruined the characters for me, and the plot was slow, and yeah, those were my thoughts. And due to that, I gave this book 2.5 stars. And I think the lowest I've ever given a book is like 2 stars. And I mean, I got through this book, but it was just, I don't know. Maybe even 2.5 is too high. I don't know. But yeah, 2.5 is what I'm gonna give it for now. After that book, I read Kingdom of the Feared, which is Kingdom of the Wicked Book 3. And honestly, I was not going to read this book. It wasn't really that good, but my sister told me it kind of picks up after the second book. So my sister didn't like the entire series. She didn't like book 1, 2, or 3, but she kind of just like sped through them. She's just a super fast reader, so she doesn't really waste time, if that makes sense. Like, she'll still get through like 20 books per month or something. But yeah, she read book 3 and told me it picked up after book 2. And so I kind of gave it a shot, if that makes sense. And honestly, book 3 was better. I still don't like the characters of Emilia or Wrath very much. You get this plot twist in this book, and it kind of just questions everything that happens in the first 2 books. And then you're like, so what is actually real? And that was kind of the situation in the book. Still, the characters, Wrath and Emilia, didn't get better. The plot was a little less confusing, but it was still confusing to me. Honestly, my sister had to explain, my younger sister, by the way, she had to explain what happened in book 2 and book 3 because I still don't get it. Due to the book being better than book 2, I gave it 3 stars. Again, based on what I said, I feel like I should be giving it a lower book, but I don't know. I feel like, I guess 3 is just okay, you know? Like, I got through it, I guess, but still I was skimming and skipping paragraphs, and there was just so much unnecessary stuff in this book, I feel like. And book 2, actually. By this time, I'm kind of just done with fantasies, especially after the last 2 books. So I picked up a mystery thriller set in the real world kind of book, and that is Nothing More to Tell by Karen M. She is the one who wrote One of Us is Lying, which is an awesome book, by the way. I read it 2 years ago, and then I think I reread it last year, and it was just so good. Even the second time, it was just really good. But Nothing More to Tell, I read so quickly. It was kind of just like in the middle, if that makes sense. That was actually the second to last book I read in July, and I just read that book so quickly and kind of as a shift from fantasy. So it's about this girl whose name I've already forgotten, but it's kind of has the feel of the starting of Good Girl's Guide. So this girl is researching this mystery death in her school. So this teacher, I think the English teacher that she really was close with, died a few years ago, and it was kind of just put off as this drifter who just killed the guy and left. But the main character, she comes in and kind of opens up that story and is starting to uncover secrets and trying to see if this teacher was just killed by a drifter, if it was some bigger mess and kind of connected to everything. So she's kind of uncovering secrets, and she comes back to the school after having moved away for a few years. So she's kind of rekindling relationships with people she knew when she was younger, and at the same time she's finishing off her high school. The book was really good. It was a solid 4 stars. It was kind of the book that you just cannot put down, and the way that the story is told is also just really good. I feel like this author just is a really good mystery thriller writer, and I feel like any of her books are just going to be really good. So solid 4 stars. Just one thing that I'm not a fan of is that this book is kind of like a reader interpretation ending, which I'm not a big fan of. I kind of just like the ending given to me, solid, clean, kind of just close it off. But this book was kind of like, hey reader, you tell me what you think, you know? So yeah, 4 stars. It was solid. It was pretty good. And then the final book of this month is Five Survive by Holly Jackson, who wrote A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which is also one of my favorite books ever. And Five Survive is literally written like the story takes place from like 10 p.m. to like 6 a.m. Like the entire story is just 8 hours long, and it is just written so well. You don't want to put the book down, like literally. I had trouble just stopping the book to like go eat or go sleep or something, because you just want to know what's going on, and I felt like I was reading too slow. Like I wanted to be able to read faster so I could know what happens next. But the idea is that these six friends are going on this road trip, and their RV like breaks down in the middle of nowhere basically, and there's no cell reception, and suddenly they are put into this situation where there's some bad guy outside the RV, and he wants something from these six people inside the RV, and now everybody's put against each other, and the people are kind of just all suspects inside, even though they were all friends. And it's kind of like everybody trying to see if they can trust each other, or if somebody inside is working with the bad guy outside. So it's really tense, and it's told through the perspective of this girl named Red, or her nickname is Red, and her way of thinking, I was not super into it. It was interesting to read, but I feel like I haven't read books where the main character is kind of thinking in such a way. I don't want to like tell you guys exactly her way of thinking, but Holly Jackson's writing in this book is kind of different from the narration of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and it's kind of something I feel like that takes a bit of used to get into, but still it was really good. I gave it a solid 4 stars. Again, it was just super fun, great mystery thriller, and there's just so much tension, and the dynamics between these six people as they are, working together, but then also kind of feeling suspicious of each other at the same time, of, what secrets they have, what they're hiding, is just really good and really fun to read about. Also, the ending is just done really well. I feel like that was such a cool ending, and I just really liked it. So yeah, solid 4 stars. It gave me a good break from fantasy, along with Nothing More to Tell. Those are the 9 books I read in July. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, whatever you guys feel like doing, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!